Alright, Misfits number 5 is this weekend, and it's time for some predictions.
He's done it from time to time. Just a bit of...
From the United Kingdom, the Nightmare. Hey!
Here's the fight card right here. Boom! That's the fight card. Not the biggest names on this card, but still lots of potential for some great fights. I'm coming off of an L from my Jake Paul prediction, but last Misfits event, I got all of them right except one fight. So I'm hoping I bounce back with my predictions here and get most of them right at least. Alright, so the first fight I'm going to talk about here is Tempo Arts versus Godson. Now, of all of the card, this is the fight I know the least about. But I saw some footage of their open workouts today, and these are some big boys. These dudes are going to be throwing some heavy punches. And I don't know if their cardio is going to let them go all 4 rounds. And judging from the footage, they both actually look pretty sharp. If I recall correctly, Tempo Arts was throwing some nice hooks, and we got to see Godson throw some nice 1-2s with a lot of power coming from both guys. And judging off the little bit of knowledge I know from them, I do think Godson looks like he has a little more power in his shots, and I think he's the bigger guy, so if he doesn't gas out too early, I'm going to predict Godson with a 3rd round finish. Now, I don't feel great about that prediction. This is like my least confident one, but that's what we're going with. Next one. Up next, we got Ginty versus Halal Ham. Now, Halal Ham, he is now a veteran in this thing. He's not the biggest name or anything, and he has taken a lot of L's. But he is getting more experienced. He dropped a lot of weight for this fight. But at the end of the day, I don't know how dedicated he is to the actual sport of boxing. But I have to say, I was impressed with Ginty in his fight against JMX. And while JMX did outclass him, Ginty showed a lot of heart, and that was with minimal training for that fight. With him continuing to train, getting better as he goes on, he has a height advantage and a huge reach advantage over Halal Ham. And if he's been dedicating himself to the sport, I do think we will see improvements from him in this fight. I'm taking Ginty by decision. Alright, 3rd fight, we got Astrid Wet versus AJ Bunker. Now, Astrid Wet has kind of become like the female face of Misfits. That's kind of like how they're pushing her right now. And I think this is the first female title fight for Misfits as well. And I know they're pushing Astrid Wet a lot, but we have to remember, we've only seen her in one fight against an opponent who was not prepared. She did do well. She was throwing a 1-2. She had an okay jab. But at the end of the day, I think AJ Bunker looks a lot sharper. AJ Bunker has boxing experience as well. And I do think AJ Bunker throws her shots with more power and has more technique overall. And because she has been tested in previous fights against Elle Brooke. But Astrid Wet has not really had that competition, and I do think this fight is going to surprise her. I got AJ Bunker by a 3rd round stoppage. Next fight, we got a little bit of a bigger name here. We got Waleed Sharks versus Ace Musa. Now, Ace is a last-minute opponent here, with NNA Productions dropping out last minute for the fight. Now, this one's pretty interesting, because originally, the NNA Productions fight, I was going to pick Waleed Sharks by 1st round finish. I think that fight was a huge mismatch. It was not going to be close, and Sharks was going to completely outclass him. But with this opponent change, I do think it makes the fight a lot more interesting. This new opponent has experience. He definitely looks like he has a lot more technique and that he has been in the ring before. But he is also coming in from a week's notice, and I don't know if he's necessarily on Waleed Shark's level. I do think it's going to be a tougher fight for Waleed, definitely a harder fight than the previous opponent, but I do think at the end of the day, Sharks is going to show his levels, his dedication to the sport, and he is going to outbox his opponent, and he is going to win by decision. And also, after this fight, if both of them win, I want to see Waleed Sharks versus Dean the Great 2. We can't let Dean the Great get away with not doing that rematch. Speaking of Dean the Great, up next we have him versus Puli Arif. I think that's how you say his name. I don't really know. He's not super well known in this space, but I did go back and I watched his last fight. He definitely has some talent. He has some skills, but I don't think he's on Dean's level, and I don't think he's going to be able to handle Dean's power. So I think the 1st round, Dean's going to have to feel him out for a bit. It's going to be a little slower start. But I think once Dean starts putting the pressure on, starts landing some power shots, I do see this fight ending relatively quick. And I have Dean the Great in a second round stoppage. Also, I think the tag team match is still happening. It's not on the main poster, but I'm pretty sure there's new opponents for that. And it is going to happen, which should just be interesting. I don't really know how to predict it, honestly, because I don't really know how it works. But it looks like the new opponents are Ice Poseidon and Anthony Vargas. But at the end of the day, you already know I have to go with the boy Pineda and B. Dave. I am never betting against Pineda again in my life. He is #1 contender. He should get the rematch with KSI. He will beat anybody in the scene, and I will always go with Pineda from this point forward. So I have Pineda and B-Dave by a decision, I guess, if that's happening. I don't really know when that fight's happening, so I'm just throwing that in here. Alright, so now for the co-main event. We got King Kenny versus Ashley Roxu. Ashley Roxu, he is a tough guy. He's not going to quit at any point in this fight. He went the full distance with Anthony Taylor, even though he did get knocked down a couple times. I don't think he has the skill that Kenny has, but I don't think we're going to see him give up. He might land some nice shots, but at the end of the day, I do think King Kenny is going to outclass him here. I don't necessarily think King Kenny's going to put him away. I think his jab is going to dictate the fight. His jab is his best weapon, and I see King Kenny winning a decision, maybe a later round stoppage, but I'm going to go with the decision. And finally, the main event, Jay Swingler versus Nick LMAO. Now, will this fight be super close? I don't think so. But I am impressed by the way Nick has picked up this sport in a short amount of time. Jay Swingler is just coming into this fight with way too much experience for Nick. I do see potential in Nick after this fight, but I do see him getting outworked here and the fight getting stopped pretty early on. I think he shows potential for the future, but I don't think he is ready for this main event, this level of an opponent, and I do see Jay Swingler winning this fight with relative ease. I think Jay might take the first round to kind of just feel the fight out, and he'll start picking up the pace as the fight goes on. And I think he's going to land some big shots early on, and just his experience is going to take over the fight here, and I see him with a second round knockout. Alright, so those are my predictions for Misfits number 5. Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Which fights do you think that I got wrong here? Are there going to be some big upsets? Maybe the King Kenny fight or the main event with Jay Swingler? Let me know what you guys think. Subscribe for more boxing updates if you feel like it. That'd be pretty cool. Thank you for watching. Peace.